These are just further high resolution images that clearly show the rod-like structures of these walls and the buildings. We've got a rod-like structure there, shadow, many perpendicular bright rod structures, courtyards, very high resolution. Some areas inside, as though the courtyard is lower down, you've got very dark green, as though the moisture accumulates and increases the vegetation in the area. Down here as well, very flat areas, so they actually look excavated. We've got the zigzag structures here again. Now these ones here are easy to focus on, so we've got the shadows. We can use the ruler just to measure the size of these rod towers. That's about 50 meters, which is about the equivalent of a 15-story structure here on Earth. As we go further down, we'll come back to one more very clear area down here as well. And here we see a definite square pattern around it. Bright lines around the areas here. From high up, the whole area is completely zigzagged with walls and tube zigzag patterns everywhere. So again, from high up you can see how clear it is. Even when you zoom down, it still remains very clear, these structures down these areas. As we get to this crater here, we see a very good pattern occurring down these areas here as well. Some of these bright towers are also right angled there. Again, you'll see the square-like pattern configurations coming in. And here we have a very good example of that zigzag pattern around the other side that happens always. As we zoom in, we'll see the towers there, and we'll see the little pattern around it. This is heavily the built upon area. All the square configurations there. As we zoom out, we can tell from high up that there's a lot of activity happening here. Very highly built up areas. Again, we've got the courtyards, the zigzag patterns, and nothing looking human at all. As we zoom out, we'll see any more structures. This is very heavily covered, obviously, with rod structures. We're about 8 kilometers high, so from that height everything seems very normal. And down as we go, we see obviously the structures around the crater. You can see the zigzag pattern there. This is a very good example of one of the rod building is very luminous inside the excavation. On the edges we got the bright white lines again, zigzag pattern, probably very thin rods. That's very luminous. It's as though it emits energy, so the width of that would be roughly 120 meters. And we now come to an interesting area here. We see the rod buildings on this area, but straight away we see the type of wall patterns here that are happening. Here as well, zigzag patterns. There's one there as well. Here we're coming to a very nice example of zigzag excavation around it. Very flat area. We've got two little ones, larger ones, an internal structure there. That was a very good example. And this is a previously labelled one as well. Very nice. This here is not that good at low resolution, so now we're coming into interesting ones. So this is at a height of 2 kilometers. As we zoom in there, you see it's obviously a structure. We've got the rods around it, internal ones as well. And here is where we have some nice clear ones. We've got the zigzag pattern happening. We've got rod structures, and this is from a height of about 200 meters. So this is a very good example there as well. There we see the shadow, so it's like a square, a base. On top we got one more rod structure, and then you got little ones around it and walls. Things look like walls and courtyards. So a shadow actually shows that this piece on top is on a larger base, same as that one there, and then you've got the zigzag walls happening around. Just do a quick measurement on that one. That one's 110 meters long. Yeah, so we've got very good zigzag patterns happening down there. Actually, see one very tiny rod tower there, and the shadow surrounded by what seems like a courtyard and a little square buildings. We'll do the measurement on that one. It's a very tiny tower, that one. That's 50 meters, so it seems tiny. It's about 15 stories. Again, I have to stipulate, I don't see anything that resembles human construction. So to try to say it's a common joint moon base by aliens and humans, I doubt, unless the humans there actually placed inside the buildings that existed previously. We've got dense vegetation happening in that area. So that's why I'm trying hard to believe this is actually anything to do with human construction. These are smaller ones here now. Now again, this is a very bright one, bright white one happening in this area. Smaller ones. Here's a good example again of, we've got the shadow of a building. Looks like the actual, there's about 3 little towers there. We've got little walls or courtyards, darker green areas around it, zigzag patterns. Just do a quick height scan of those ones. That's actually 50 meters. Again, the resolution is a bit poor on it, but we can still make out the rods and the. This one's getting interesting because we see little rods inside the excavation peeking out. Those are very luminous. You see the external one happening here, and here's a row of little ones just in that row there. It's like a excavated area, then you've got the little ones happening. They're about 50 meters each. So the process of scanning involves superficially just, again, we go through until we see something that looks like construction. Buildings, here we go. We can see the top ones here. That's a nice example. We see again rod-like structures and that little zigzag pattern around it, which is very common. As we go down, we see that's a very strong shadow. Many little towers happening here in that area there, and zigzag patterns everywhere. One example there is a little tower, shadow. From high up again we zoom across to see anything that's obvious in the landscape. Let's just zoom on this one. Obviously this is, you can see the little rod structures there from high up. Again, these are very luminous on the edge, so it seems as though it's like a hilly area. You've got straight lines there around those buildings. The resolution is not that good in that one. Here's a good example of, we've got 1, 2, 3 or 4 towers. We've got a shadow and zigzag patterns around it. And the whole area is full of zigzag type of structures. Here we go. This is nice. This is very dense. Here we've got 1 or 2 towers. Yeah, so these are very obvious. Extremely obvious towers. Very dense, but the resolution I'm not that happy with. On the edge of the crater here, we see activity again of towers happening. And here we'll see about 2, 3, 4 green around it. I'll actually label those, that's a very good example. We'll see that zigzag pattern happening on the ground as well. Nothing here, again, anything that's humanly constructed, I believe. Nothing here is human at all. From a height of 1.5 kilometers, you can tell things are happening, but for the unexperienced eye, you wouldn't call it a city. There's no roads or bridges or anything that we know that resemble things on Earth. But as you get low down, then you'll see these little strange towers and things happening on the ground. It's so dense in this area, I just can't believe how heavily populated is down there. We've got a nice structure happening here. Actually, we'll zoom in on this area. We haven't labeled this before. We've got a building happening, zigzag, rod structures, shadows. We'll see all these nice towers popping up there from the edge of the crater. These are very clear actually. It's a very good example. So I'll just do a quick measurement on that one using the Google Earth ruler. That's about 60 meters. So again, they're about 50 meter towers. We see the very pronounced patterns down here. We've got 2 towers happening in this area here, shadows. As we zoom in about 5.6 kilometers, we can just work out what's happening from a very high level. Come to a very dark area. Usually the dark area is very mountainous. Here we come to a group of rods, so you can see that from very high up. As you zoom in, obviously there's structures happening there on the ground. Let's just zoom into this one here. And again we see the dense configurations here of the towers, and do a quick measurement. They're about 60 meters high, shadows. Again, there's a lot of building activity that has happened here. So again, I can't see all this being done by human activity over 30 years. That's a nice example of all these zigzag courtyards and structures and towers. They're just everywhere. Very, very dense area here. This is a very nice. We see evidence here of nice